inculcation, indoctrination, ways of
All them
learning
shuns.
to get along in society. Like it, all of that stuff is a part of education. And the bigger problem is, um, a big portion of how a child is educated is not the information that they learn, it's the lifestyles and the
Right.
behavior patterns that they see.
Right. So my question for you all, what type of education should we be receiving to create an independent Black community? And what type of education should we be receiving to help re-educate ourselves from the miseducation that we've received over the last centuries? This is what we're covering today. I'm Joseph Wood. He's Patrick Irvin, Carson Jones. It's Breakdown Friday, and we doing it how we do it. If you are new to the channel, welcome. We give thought-provoking, critical thinking information, not just information for us to feel good about ourselves because we know the information, but information that we can practically use to improve our individual and collective lives. Welcome to On the Shoulders of Giants. What's up, Pat? What's up, PC? How y'all doing today?
Hey, man. Ready to rock and roll, brother.
Everything is everything. Hey, so real quick, I had to take the book readings down. Yeah, YouTube. So I had to take the book readings down, but never fret. I'm just come back with the reviews. So I'm still reading the book. We still gonna talk about it. We're still gonna get into these books. I'm gonna just hit y'all with the reviews. But nevertheless, let's go ahead and get into it. Like I said, we're talking about re-educating ourselves. What type of education do we need to create an independent Black community? And what type of education do we need to reverse the miseducation that we've received over the centuries? We're using our third clip from Professor Carson Jones's landmark documentary, The Independence Day Project. Remember, the link is in the bio to get the documentary. So let's get into it. And we're going to break it down as we go.
We've been taught that Africana Studies is a bullshit degree. We've been taught that it's not important. It doesn't help us get a job. It's not a nation building discipline. But nothing could be further from the truth. When Malcolm called for a liberatory education, when he called for us to explore every dimension of our people and our history, he was basically making a call for Africana Studies. Africana Studies is not just the study of our ancient history. It also includes the study of our history, culture, and politics of African people wherever we exist, regardless of land, label, or language. Who's going to teach our history? Who's going to use rigorous research methodology to explore the contours of our existence and our culture? Who's going to keep our cultural memory alive? Who's going to train future scholars and scholar activists? Those people are going to be your people in Africana Studies. So this includes people like Amos Wilson, John Henry Clark, Dr. Ben, Francis Cress Welsing. People who look at our history, culture, and politics and provide critique of oppression and blueprint to remedy oppression. And they do this specifically from a Black lens, from a Black perspective and point of view. This is why.
So I want to kind of clip it right there. Africana Studies. I like what he said. Being students and student activists.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because we big on using the information, but he's specifically talking about Africana Studies. I guess we would call it. I don't know what the three of us would call it, because we was. I guess the way we would present the information and look at it would be a building upon the Africana Studies. So it's still Africana Studies. I don't know. You know, we just want to call something. We want to build on it and call it. I don't know why we want to give it a new name. We ain't got to give it a new name. Africana Studies. Forget I said all that, but Africana Studies. But I do think this links back to our breakdown that we did about Robin Walker. That's the first thing I think about. And we talked about the importance of knowledge of self, and that's another way we can label it, knowledge of self, Africana Studies, but being able to use the historical information to properly use the historical information in addition to information about Black psychology or information about economics or information from any other area of human activity, but specifically the Africana studies, because we know the history is important. Now, I guess I'm thinking 2023. I'm thinking using education for today. The new Negroes that we are today. Africana studies or Black history or knowledge of self, that information is still very, in my opinion, still very, 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 very relevant today. But what's irrelevant is just sitting on the information. What's irrelevant is just you're happy to have the information. Of course, we repeated this over and over and over, but the clip calls for it. But that's the irrelevant part. Not we, like I was thinking earlier today, it's not the knowledge itself isn't power. Applied knowledge is power. So when we get the information, how can we apply it? But also when the information is taught, it's the information being taught from an angle or a lens to where the students can receive the information in a manner that could spur them into action, rather than just in a manner of, well, I know this and I want to go share these facts. But student activists spurring that information, that is to me, that's one of the most important things that we need to be doing right now in 2023, is figuring out how to take proper action to change things, because that's the purpose of the information. If we're talking about liberation, if we talk about independence, if we're talking about freedom and the combination of all these things, using this information to really free ourselves, not just using the information just to feel good about it. I don't want to sound repetitive, so I'm gonna stop there. So I want to, which one I want to pick up on that?
You can take it back.
Honestly, I think
Dang.
it was there, man. Anyways, honestly, I think in 2023, because of how segmented and stratified the world is, while at the same time globalized and all encompassing, I think we do probably need a new name for it, just to put a new flavor on it for the younger generation. And when I say that, that's me fully understanding um, the connection and everything like that, but also understanding that because of what's happened over the years, there's been a tax placed on everything associated with Africana, African, Africa. And it kind of makes, and I'm in the space with young people all day. They kind of want to steer away from that stuff. They love the information, but you can see that they're kind of off put by it. So I think if we could come up with something specific to Black people here in America as a culture group, and then work our way back like we did with the Black history curriculum that we made for PAX years ago, start in the present and work our way back to teach them the connection they have to Africa and African cultures and things like that. But I do think a new name would be beneficial in getting this new younger generation of Black folk on board with learning about themselves. Knowledge itself has become taboo. Black history has become pretty much everything for everybody but Black people. And I say that with the inclusion of intersectionality. And now they're talking about this whole queer theory, thanks to what y'all got going on down there in Florida. Like, it's kind of been the term Black history has been so watered down that it could literally mean anybody at this
It's
point.
our fault though. That's our fault, because we let everybody take it and just do what they want with it.
I
And because
understand. I understand and I agree with that, which is why I'm saying that's the tax we gotta pay. So I'm like, in order to avoid paying that tax, and I'm not saying we have to, I'm just saying it's something that need to be on the table. We need to consider coming up with a different name for whatever we choose to do moving forward educationally. That's all.
Okay. So I didn't sound crazy. Okay.
This is a tricky one because I get that in order to make it relevant for this current generation of or current era. I'm not even gonna say generation because I think you can go through all age ranges and pretty much have the same results. That short attention span, that inability to connect to things that people see as defeated. And when you put the term, you put the word Africa in front of something, Black people themselves back away from it because they know that there's a consequence to it. If they accept it, they're going to have to face a consequence for it. And this goes back to the previous conversation we had about culture being insulating and protective. So because we don't have the culture in place, there's nothing to protect them from the wrath that they're going to deal with when they associate with it. So even if it's not conscious, it's a subconscious thing for a lot of people today to reject anything tied to being to African centeredness. So I get that. But I think backing away from it sort of plays into the hands of somebody saying, well, this was weak anyway. I think the problem is we've been backing away from it for a very long time. This whole concept of being black, being black and being strong and African centered died in the 70s. It found a revitalization and with hip hop in the mid 80s, early 90s with groups like Public Enemy and so forth. But for the most part, that was short-lived and then drowned out, with other forms of music that were used to sort of like become the new black exploitation of Black people. So, and I think that we need to find a different way, but a more efficient and effective way to be more unapologetic about what we stand on. But we can't do it the way we're trying to right now because it's ineffective.
Right.
And I'm not with doing things that's ineffective and inefficient. I know some people will ride this horse until it falls down, until it dies. But that's not going to, that's not going to work for us for the long run. So it's something that, and this is why I say we need think tanks, because something like this there needs to be a sophisticated study with resources attached to it to formulate a strategy that will get this into the mainstream of Black America in a way where it sticks, it suffice, and it is protective of those who embody it. So whatever, if it's the name, if the think tank comes up with a name, cool. If a think tank comes up with a different strategy, if a think tank comes up with a way to make this profitable, spiritually, culturally, as well as financially, because you don't have to be broke. You know what I'm saying? I think that's the way to go about it. But as long as we don't let it wither away, and as long as we don't allow for it to continuously be watered down, like Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday, his March on Selma, the March on Washington, the I Have a Dream speech, or the month of February, which turned into a Hallmark card embracing all the things about Black people that America originally hated, but put it in a nice gift-packed wrapping. You know what I'm saying? And redelivered it, repackaged it for us to observe. You can now get your Black History moments at Walmart.
See, that's why I'm thinking. All right, I'm finna pull a page out of Pat book. All right, look, let's start. Let's set some new foundations. Let's define what education is for us moving forward, especially if we're talking about the mindset of independence and liberation. Let's define what education is, and let's define what culture is through those lenses, right? Thinking about I believe I've heard Dr. Clark talk about it, and I heard Dr. Wilson talk about it. The education you receive should be education that could help you create independence, help you produce, help you build what you need for yourselves as a people, right? So we talked about it in the HBCU shows. We talked about it specifically colleges, but we just talk about the education that we receive, whether it's in school or in life. The total type of education that we receive as Black people is overall, it's not an education that's designed for liberation. Of course, we know the white man's education ain't no education for us that's designed for liberation. But even the education that we receive from ourselves, because of the Negro mindsets, it's education that we receive of destruction. And hopefully we find roses that grew from the concrete who can give us information that can help us empower ourselves. Because looking at the overall situations that we're in, just looking at how we receive information, how we give information, even how we go find information. Let's just be real. Most Black people don't give a damn about learning what we need to learn to free ourselves. Most Black people ain't interested in learning just basic stuff that they need for survival. Just act like learning how to cook is an issue. That's the basic survival thing.
But see, I don't even think is that they really recognize their ineptitude. I think we really need to spend some time on the societal, biological, and chemical warfare that's been taking place on the minds of these young people, their short attention spans, the inability to think cognitively, to critical think. That's real. If it ain't about being locked into a video game, they can't computate anything. So I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that it's like the student in the classroom who is a behavior problem and is acting up and picking on students and bullying everybody, and then halfway through the semester you find out that they can't read or they can't count. And I think we have a lot of that going on in our community, where it's easier to pretend like I don't care about it than a lot of people saying there's a serious issue in regards to our cognition skills that there's not there anymore. And that's something that needs to be addressed because I've read the reports about what happened in Flint. I read the reports about what happened in New York with their lead conditions. I read the report about what's happening now in Philadelphia, where we have a lead water issue that nobody's addressing, in terms of the fact that the lead count per million was higher in Philadelphia water than it was in Flint, Michigan at the worst time. You know what I'm saying? So we see all those things, Jackson, Mississippi, that we see the warfare that's taking place. A lot of times it has a lot of fallout that we don't talk about because we really can't see. It's hard to measure it. But one of the things people predicted that with Flint is you're going to see an escalation of violence once these young people come of age, because after a certain point, their ability to comprehend and their a level of confusion that it's going to cause is going to lead to them reacting more violently to situations than they would have in the past had they not been poisoned with that with the fallout from all that lead and toxicity in the water.
Hey, you want to know what could help us though? Proper education on how to be self-sustaining and self-sufficient.
I agree.
Proper education for liberation.
But the problem with that is, and it's instead of just tiptoeing around it, I'll be the bad guy. When you're dealing with
I was
people
trying to
that
be.
have impaired cognition, right? Like we're talking about, because this is one of the fallouts of lead poisoning and
That's true. Environmental racism.
all of the environmental racism. We've been talking about it for years. And I think it's one of those subjects everybody's scared to broach because nobody wants to be seen as that person that's calling Black people slow. But the fact of the matter is, and I'm not saying black people are slow. I actually think black people still being able to show the level of cognitive ability that we can show despite the environments that we've been placed in is nothing short of a miracle. It shows our ability to adapt and maintain. But we have to be real about the fact that we are not intellectually where we would be if we had not been in the environments that we're in. And for those of us that are in the worst of those environments, you can't come in there and talk to them like you would talk to somebody that grew up in the suburbs, out in nature, or in a well-to-do environment. They're not going to comprehend the same way. And I can say that because I deal with people on a regular basis that come from all walks of life. And as we're interacting with these children, there are clear signs of the environmental impact on their ability to comprehend the information that we're giving them. And you got to change the approach. And that's the thing that most people don't want to account for. And that's the reality. Now, that stuff can be undone, like you said, Joe, with proper education and proper support. But before we can start establishing proper education and proper support, we got to understand that there is a problem here with the ability of a lot of black people to perform cognitive functions. And it's not their fault. It's the fault of the environment that they grew up in. But it becomes the community's fault when we fail to even see it and consider it as a possible factor that needs to be addressed.
Right.
Yeah, that part.
Right.
And I don't think you're a bad guy for identifying that.
No, that's what we look. People, I read the comments. People love our honesty. I shout out to all my on the shoulder giant supporters. They love our honesty. We ain't ain't trying to make friends like that. If we're gonna make friends, we're gonna make friends off being honest. If your feelings hurt, this ain't the channel for you. All right. That's just what it is. But so you trying to say that educated people can't figure out how to get the information to the people who need the information. That's what you're saying, Pat?
Pretty much the way they can't understand it, the way they comprehend is not the same way that the people in the lower rungs of the black community comprehend.
So you know what that means, right? Lack of proper what? Education. And lack of proper understanding of the information that you have, because one of the tenets of, especially if you're a person that is disseminating information. Now, I learned this 13 years of doing HIV/AIDS information, right? I have to take 17 and 27 letter words and give that to somebody who come from a lower educational realm than me. I'm known for simplifying stuff. That's just how I think. That's just the environment I'm in. You can say something, you can say it in your most elaborate way and use all your SAT and all your GRE words and all that stuff. And I'm gonna come back and simplify it and make it simple, because you have to understand the audience that's in front of you. You have to understand the people that you're trying to educate. And if you don't understand that, that means you haven't been educated properly.
Well, you also have the skill set of a master teacher, and a lot of people don't have that ability.
They shouldn't be teaching.
I totally agree. You know what I'm saying? I totally agree. You get no arguments here. You know,
but because that goes that further hurts thing. That's more miseducation.
Yeah. It's like I said, no arguments here. You know,
I almost forgot about this clip.
No, but see, because the problem is, even those people, because I've seen people that are incredible teachers and they understand the information very well. The problem comes in when they don't see their audience. Like they don't
part of the education.
Right. Well, but that's where I'm saying we got to have these types of conversations more, because usually, like from what I've seen, when I'm in groups of people that are educators and that are informal educators, especially, I can't say a lot about professional educators. You and PC are professional educators and y'all do a great job. But most of our education is done informally through informal teachers. And when they realize that the
Yeah,
group,
that's true.
when they realize that what they're seeing is not what they thought they were going to see, or not what they
Mhm.
feel like they should be seeing,
Mhm.
there's a breakdown in their cognition, and they lash out and they start saying, why are we so stupid? Why are we? They start attacking their audience,
Right,
which
Mhm.
creates more of that tax that we're
right,
constantly having to pay. When we, I mean, you think about it in the conscious community right now, that I listen to people all the time talk about the reason I don't bang with them pro-black people is they think they better than the rest of us. They this, they that,
right,
they did. That
right,
is a failure on a lot of levels
Yeah.
right.
of all parties to see each other. And I think that's the problem we have. And that problem persists because when you tell people, well, you're going into this community and their cognitive functions might not be up to par because of the environment that they've existed in for generations. So you, instead of being here with it, you got to be here with it. They can get it. You just got to bring it down a few
But
notches. First thing they say, and we've all heard this, our people ain't stupid. They get offended. What are
That's
you trying to say?
25.
Our people ain't stupid. I'm look, that's not what I'm saying. And now you're on the back foot trying to defend, and then they go out there, their message isn't received because they brought it up here and it should have been down here, and now they lashing out at the audience
but
because we can't have this conversation.
but if you're going into an audience that you haven't done your homework on, that's another example of a lack of a proper education. But also understanding that we have been miseducated in school and within our natural environments, our home environments, our
Mhm.
community environments as well. So, but
Well, before
go
we
ahead.
start, I wanted to say one other thing because PC made a good point about finding a way to mainstream it. And I think we have to, that's another one of them things where we got to be real about it. We got to find a way to access the black mainstream independent of other communities, because right now the only clear cut, efficient and effective way to mainstream anything into the black community is to inject it in white society,
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
and that's
Via
problematic.
Well, that's
YouTube.
that. Once again, though, that's why going to this conversation is very, very important. Proper re-education, because we believe that in order, like you just said, in order to hit the mainstream, in order to really be successful, that you got to be in the realm with white people. So yeah, yeah, yeah.
Africana Studies is so important. Africana Studies is special. It's one of the only academic disciplines I know of that says we have rigorous research, we create radical theory, and then that radical theory and that rigorous research is supposed to manifest in the action on the ground to create the type of institutions we need, the type of clear thinking, analytical minded people we need, and ultimately the nation we need.
And so the areas in which we must be self-determining and powerful, we've identified. Number one, the area is independence of information, education, and learning. You have to control that in your own village. As long as other people, other cultures, other forms are educating and providing the information and the learning processes for your people, you will not have power. You will not have self-determination.
We have to explain to our children that we are living in a system of white supremacy.
In a liberated society with a liberatory educational system, we will have children who are practicing and embodying the values of Mayat.
One.
Before we get to that, because you're talking about Pat, you were in an environment that's about as close to liberated as we can get right now, as far as the educational environment. I mean,
No, I
you
get what you're
all
saying. I just laugh because that's actually pretty sad. But go ahead.
no, but I mean, look, those of you who educate black children and you dictate what they learn, you dictate how they learn, when they learn, where they learn. You have as much control. You actually have as much of an independent environment, learning environment for Black people as you can possibly create.
That's true. Actually,
We
that's true.
we need more of those environments, but also in those environments, like you said, the connection has to be made. We have an overall disconnect between generations. Look, we'll go ahead and say it. Let's go ahead and talk about this when we talk about education. My generation and the generation before me, we don't see eye to eye. One of the things is a lack of respect both ways, but especially a lack of respect our way, because we would expect the older ones to have a better mindset, like that's what brother Aj was talking about, a clearer mindset. We expect older ones to have a better mindset to be able to teach us better so we can behave better. But you can't give us bad information. You can't teach us how to do everything bad and then get mad when we do it. That's crazy. But then, oh, your generation is disrespectful. I wonder why the generation is disrespectful. And then my generation now, we're saying that by the generation before under us. Well, them kids is this. How the hell you talking about your own kids? Your own kids? Well, what did you teach them? What did you teach your children? Or did you even teach your children? Because remember, the generation under us, they were raised by computers, they were raised by cell phones and TVs.
They were also the first generation of latchkey kids in our community, and I think that had a lot to do with the recklessness, with the lack of discipline, also recovering during and recovering the crack cocaine era, which I'm not blaming or I'm not saying making excuses, but that was something that's probably the most devastating thing to affect a community with no community resources. And, you pretty much broke up the entire home. So you had children raising children. But we did have an opportunity to rebound toward the end of the 90s. And we started producing a lot of people in the professional ranks, a lot of people and other things. And once that happened, it kind of created this sense of entitlement, this sense of bourgeois living, bourgeois lifestyles. And we got disconnected from that culture and community, block parties, things that made people care about each other enough too, because there were programs I'm telling you, when I was growing up, you did have electricians teaching young people the skills to be an electrician. You had people who were teaching masonry. These were brothers on the block. The doctor lived down the street. You can go get your physical around the corner. We lost all aspects of community during that time. And along with that, we lost access to people like a Dr. Amos Wilson. We lost access to, people, like the John Henry Clarks who, were elders, later elder statesmen in those times. We lost a connection to the Dr. Francis Cress Welsons, the people who, and then watch them get ridiculed in national TV because, not only did you have syndicated white folk like Phil Donahue and Sally Jesse Raphael, but you also had bought and paid for Negroes who discredited them, even though now we can look back and see that they were actually on the mark with what they were teaching. We had a lot of those things in place, but, we can't get past the fact that we've been warred on. And that pseudo recovery kind of blurred the vision of people who forgot that because you have access to a college education now, you can go to a HBCU. We were no longer being at war. We bought into the Cosby
access to whiteness, most specifically. I'm gonna say country, most specifically, access to whiteness.
So we lost our grip in terms of why we did it. There was a drive to why we fought back, and we lost access to that because we became bourgeois, and once again, bought into the whole notion of, like you said, that access to whiteness. There's a brother that wrote a book about that, Addicted to Whiteness. He's right here in Philadelphia. That speaks to, I think his name is Jerome Fox, Dr. Jerome Fox, that speaks to that. And it brilliantly breaks down the dynamics and how we want to be white so bad, that, you know, we tie into even the food, our flowers bleached and things, our rice is white, everything about it is white. And we want access to that whiteness because we consider whiteness godliness. And that's what we tend to worship. And that's why we've been so disconnected from the things from our spiritual center, our cultural center, in which we derive all of our values from. And we you know, kind of lose sight of that.
Yeah, and touching on you're talking about especially the resources, the communities, things that we lost. We lost a lot in the beginning, and then we started just giving it up because of access to whiteness. And that goes into, once again, the type of education that Black people were receiving in schools, but more importantly within their environment, the messages, because the messages that we receive on a regular basis goes into the type of education that we receive: non-traditional education, non-traditional training, unconscious education, unconscious training. So like here in my city, Frenchtown, it's an area called Frenchtown, the black area in Tallahassee. Frenchtown was the Black hub in Tallahassee until Black people got the notion to sell everything because we want to be able to have access to white people's stuff. Now, what type of information and what type of education and what type of trainings, what type of influencing was going on for Black people to say, you know what, it's better for us to give up our own stuff to be a part of white people's stuff. And then today, it's kind of masked because there's these buy Black movements, but these buy Black movements ain't nothing but for people to get more money so they can access white spaces, i.e. Kanye West. Because Kanye he want to be down with the white boy so bad. That's why he ranting and raving. So we ain't paying no attention to you, Kanye. But anyway, but it's, for me, it's moving forward, and this is for the educated ones. This is for the ones who supposed to have broken the chains. These are for the ones who light switches on, whose light is on, who know better, who are conscious, right? We can't tell.
Yeah, I think
We can't tell. We ain't doing nothing. We can't tell. And the information that we're getting and receiving is not doing anything. It's not helping. And a lot of times we're still receiving. Well, even those conscious people are still looking for white acceptance. Go ahead, Pat. My bad.
no, you good. I think the problem is education is indoctrination, right? That's one thing we got to accept, right? Inculcation, indoctrination, ways of
All them
learning
shuns.
to get along in society, like it, all of that stuff is a part of education. And the bigger problem is, a big portion of how a child is educated is not the information that they learn, it's the lifestyles and the
Right.
behavior patterns that they see.
Right.
And that conundrum, that contradiction that's prevalent in the Black society, that says be proud of who you are, but that also says to be successful you got to be less of who you are, or that's what it shows them, while telling them to be proud of it, creates a level of apathy, like what PC mentioned earlier.
But it's not to cut you off. Just say
Go
this:
ahead.
but for a lot of people, it's very difficult to be proud of who you are and where you're from when it look like bullshit around you.
Well, yeah, but I think that's one of the challenges that we face, is that people have to actually live what they preach, and it starts with even who we celebrate and why we celebrate. Like me and Miss Kristen had this conversation oftentimes about the purpose of celebration in a community. The purpose of holidays. What's the difference between celebrating and recognizing? Those things matter.
Right.
And so when we put out the calendar that we put out for PAX years and years and years ago, one of the cool things I loved about it was that the typical holidays were not in there. We had the birthdays of major Black historical figures that contributed to Black progress and things that like these are. So as you begin to recognize the John Henrik Clarks and the Amos Wilsons and all these other pioneers and people that kind of led the way and paved the way for a lot of the things we did. Those are the things that are going to shift the impact for the children that grow up only knowing, celebrating Black people that were proud of
Right.
being Black and that progressed Black people. That's
Right.
when you can really start the education with the information. Right now, we just throwing information. We are writing on a whiteboard with an erasable marker, and then getting mad when it don't stay up after we close out for the end of the day and somebody come by and erase the board. Like it's what we're doing is not working because it hasn't been set up to work. So even in this educational conversation that we having about, okay, how do we create a curriculum that'll stick? The problem is right now, I don't believe any curriculum will stick.
It's not about the curriculum.
Because the behaviors aren't in place.
Right. It's not about the curriculum. It'll be about the environment that the children go back in after they leave the school, because the environment is not set up to reinforce the information. So once again, the environmental education that we receive is very, 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 very important. But we put more emphasis on the education the formal education that they receive in school, which usually can get undone when you go back to the wrong environment.
Well, not usually. It does get undone.
There you go.
And I can speak from the teaching aspect first. You know, I taught for 10 years on the collegiate level. And I always taught from an African-centered Black nationalist perspective, whatever lesson I taught. I taught it from the lens of a Black person living in America, going through whatever we were going through. I taught it from the African lens, dealing with global politics, whatever world event. I taught it by the impact it had in the Black community. You can't teach like that no more in these institutions. You can't teach like that, because the first thing is this woke culture. All of these cats get offended so easily. We have not bred a strong mentality when it comes to young minds being able to even receive this information. They're not prepared for it. And it goes against everything else society tells them to value, just like y'all was talking about before. I had 2 students come up to me today because there was a ceremony in the particular college campus I work on now, where the Black flag was, RBG flag was raised. I got one. 2 students asked me, what is this flag and why does it have these colors? What does it represent? These are 2 Black students in college.
I wouldn't expect them to know in college. They don't, trust me, they don't. College students now, they were born in 2002, 2000, they don't know.
Right. But bottom line is, even in this woke culture, that this type, they're not even ready to receive that. So we're not preparing them or raising them from a perspective where they have to actually they're prepared to receive because this is not light shit. This is heavy.
Right.
This information we talk about is anti everything.
But you know what's funny though? Because you like, and just real quick, like you talk about woke, right? Remember in the early 2000s when woke meant that we could talk about this RGB stuff, RBG stuff, we could talk about Blackness. Remember when that's what woke originally meant, like by you being proud of your Blackness, and then woke transformed to being politically correct. It was a hijack. The white people hijacked the pro-Black movement, the pro-Black wokeness. They just took it.
They didn't hijack it. It went mainstream.
Yeah,
they gave it to them.
Just like hip hop.
That's right.
You know, we don't believe we own anything, not even our own history. And that's something that, and I've said this for a long time. The one thing I respect about other communities, they don't rely on public entities, government entities, to supply their history to them, their culture to them. They take those matters into their own hands. And the problem we have so much is that when a few of us decide to sacrifice our time, our energy, our effort into doing those things for our community, the rest of the like, cool, y'all got it. That's what's up. Now I can go this time off somewhere else. Sorry, I had a Patrick moment. I can go this time off somewhere else.
But talking about further miseducation, there are a lot of people who don't even realize a lot of people think that Black people only had access to Black history since like maybe the 50s or the 60s. A lot of people don't realize, and I'm not saying en masse, but a lot of people don't realize that Black people had access to Black history going back to the 1850s.
Yeah.
You know, so of course the white folk didn't teach us that, but why the Black folk didn't teach us that? Because some Black people somewhere had this information.
No, the
But we
Black
didn't.
folk,
It didn't get around.
the Black folk did teach each other that. I think one of the problems we have now is there was a great forgetting.
Mm-hmm.
Like we talk about the great moving and the great migration and the great awakening and in the Black community there was a great forgetting.
Mm-hmm.
Where information became, and I think a lot of it, I wasn't around back then. I did, obviously I wasn't. But I do what research I can do, and then I try to put pieces together on my own. I think a lot of it is centered around Black people feeling like that information put their children at risk, and so they didn't share it anymore.
And
We
Of
saw a
course.
duplication of that, and with the kids and the teenagers and whatnot from the 50s and 60s, right? They had kids, and they took the praise and adulation for being a part of the civil rights movement, but they didn't talk to their kids a lot about what they saw and what that meant. That information is gone, and we know that it's gone because here you are now having their grandkids and great grandkids doing the same shit they were doing,
And think they
but
think
they
it's new.
doing something new.
Right. Getting the
that
same results.
that is some of the most iconic. When I think about that, and I think about the fact that I had a conversation with my then late teens, early 20s nephews, and they were telling me about how times are different now, and race isn't as big of an issue as it was back then. And I thought about this, and I said, this is cyclical. Like every third generation, we have Black children, young Black people thinking this whole idea about race is over because you got a couple woke white friends that you can intermingle with and have conversations with. I said, but let me ask you a question. When it comes to the resources that they're allowed to have access to, do they give you access to it, or you think it's just cool because they get to come to your parties and hang out? And see, we get the social aspect confused. The young, especially every third generation, gets that social aspect of it confused because of what you just said, Pat, the great forgetfulness, the forgetfulness. And it's to a point where I'm teaching it, but I'm a pariah. I'm the black sheep of my family for teaching it. Because,
of course. Because you're gonna make them white folk mad.
You was gonna cause some trouble, so you know what I'm saying.
So look, this you remind me of my mom. My mom told a story about one time when she was young, a white man was coming to either sell them something or collect some money. And my grandmother's name was Sadie. She was much older than this white man. And he was addressing her by her first name as if they was on the same level. And my grandmother didn't do anything about it. She was just letting it go. My mom spoke up, and she was reprimanded by my grandmother for speaking up in the mindset of, don't mess up this relationship with this white person. That's a part of the education that we receive. We got to think about that. That's a part that she was teaching of good. Now, good thing my mom didn't receive that, because my mom, I ain't gonna lie, she a little firecracker. Her little ass, she I ain't gonna lie, she out there. She don't back down from nobody. But imagine if that would have stuck. Imagine that would have stuck. Like, my mom has been able to help so many people because she has that fire in her. But imagine if that would have stuck. Like, she probably would have passed down that docile mindset to us, to me and my brother.
Yeah, and that's the the genius of white supremacy, you got to give them credit for this. They've been able to spin doctor this whole racial conversation around making black people feel as though they're obligated to make everybody else feel comfortable
Right.
with the conversation of race, when everybody else benefits off the exploitation of black people for race.
Man.
So it's like saying somebody can assault me in a certain way, and I got to make them feel comfortable about the fact that they're assaulting me is not offensive, that I need to be more accepting and understanding as to why it should be okay for them to assault. And it's like, it's ass backwards, but when you try to explain it, they get so like this especially this current era of people get so enamored or so caught up. It's not passion, but it's raw emotion. They can't even hear the words you're saying to them because all they're doing is thinking about firing back and shutting you down because you have made them have to address something that they consciously know is wrong, but they can't acknowledge that it's wrong.
Hey, education starts at home, black people. We got to be more cognizant about the environments we create.
One of the things, because we go back to this like culture conversation about celebration of heroes and the way that they manipulate the conversation, even with regards to the superiority of whiteness. When we start talking about black people being blessed in the white schools and white flight, we've had this conversation before about how there weren't any white kids being blessed in the black schools. There weren't any black curriculums being sent with black kids into white schools. And so that's something that we don't think about. But when we're talking about the heroes that we celebrate, like all of our heroes are given to us, and some of them we have to ask the question, do they deserve to be celebrated or should they just be recognized? Right. Ruby Bridges is one of those. I love the work that she's done since she's been an adult, as far as making certain stances and things of that nature. But when I ask myself, why is she a hero? So she desegregated schools. So she was the little black girl whose family, she was one of the multitude. Didn't. Right. She was one of the multitude of children whose families decided to send them into a hostile environment repeatedly. And
I think that's crazy.
Allowed them to be abused, mistreated, and just
with no protection. No protection.
And they did this repeatedly.
Yeah, they needed their asses whooped.
And this is the person that we choose to celebrate for overcoming. Now, to me, I celebrate those black people who started to send their kids into that environment, saw what it was, and was like, no, I'm not sending my kid into that. We should know their names. We start talking about the lady that integrated schools, and a large portion of these people were women. But in any case, are little girls. We start talking about the one of the girls that integrated schools in California, and how she sees spots in her eyes, in her field of view to this day because she was shot in the face with chalk. And you start talking about some of the bodily harm, permanent damage that these people went through, right? In order to be but these are the people that give to us as heroes, and we never really bother to sit back and think about what.
Well, you know who mine is.
What is it doing to us that we celebrate someone whose parents threw them out to the wolves repeatedly, over and over and over again, and they survived? And we let the wolves tell us that that's a hero. That's who you should emulate.
I'm finna make a lot of. On top of that, I'm finna make people even more mad. Jackie Robinson.
Oh, JRS?
Jackie Robinson. Yeah. Jackie Robinson.
I've been raging against Jackie Robinson for decades.
He's a hero for being the first black person to agree to play in the white baseball league when he didn't have to. We know who we celebrate. We don't not commemorate. Black people celebrate Jackie Robinson, but have no idea who Rube Foster is, the man who was the mind behind creating the Negro League, the league that was more successful than the Major Baseball League, the league that Jackie Robinson left to go play with the white people.
And he
But
left to
because
go
they
play
told
with,
us that he's a hero, we celebrate him as a hero.
and they tried to get other players before Jackie. At least that's what my research says. Jackie was the first to say yes, and
Right.
he didn't leave for a major upgrade in pay.
No, but what he was is, and as I recall, he was considered the right Negro with the right mentality to make the transition.
Absolutely.
For what?
Just
For
like
what?
Rosa Parks.
For what? So in 2023, less than 7% of black less than 7% of the players in the MLB are black Americans. Is that what he took the beatings for? And a lot of people say, well, Jackie went through a lot. He didn't have to.
Yeah, I mean, and listen, Philadelphia was the last city to desegregate for baseball. Like, but in that regards, you know what I'm saying, you know, nobody should be iconic for cooning. And, you know, even the stuff he said afterwards, you know what I'm saying, he's just as bad as the surgeon who became the the director for basket weaving in the White House.
Yeah, Miracle Hands.
Who is this? Oh, you're talking about being Carson.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Okay.
but I want to get back to the little girls, because it's very important that we understand that what that wasn't an integration program. That was a ritualistic blood sacrifice that took place, and they sacrificed those little girls for the society we have today to destabilize black houses. Let's not forget that the United States Treasury Department put out a documentary that year in 1954 called How to Sell the Negro, in which they talked about exploiting black dollars in a capitalistic way by utilizing strategies that still work to this day, selling Negroes on brand names and getting the newest this and the newest that, and how that became more so their marketing strategy. They really didn't give a damn about those schools and the children they brought into those schools. They did so for the fact that they wanted access to the black dollar economy-wise, so black people would stop building their own communities that kept getting burnt down and rebuilt and burnt down and rebuilt and drowned out and rebuilt and all those other things. They wanted to take black people away from those. And it speaks to what you said again, Joe, miseducation, because Carter G. Woodson spoke about that all the time, the miseducation of the Negro and how it would be perpetuated and how it would destabilize the black community. Now we got a whole society of Negroes looking for the back door.
We are the new Negroes who have been further miseducated, because our miseducation goes for the times that we exist in.
Yeah.
So let's finish this clip up.
One area of activity that I think that black people will really have to make a change in order to achieve black independence is education.
How we can get people to gradually advance through the different stages of Bloom's taxonomy, and to become more critical thinkers, which the schools that we would have, that would be like the priority, because in order to handle power, we have to be able to think critically.
If I understand any of our ancestors thoroughly, it is Dr. Carter G. Woodson. When he wrote The Miseducation of the Negro, that is one powerful, concise book. He said that more things at that time, which was lynchings as opposed to like the police brutality, shooting that we today, they was lynching us. He said more than fighting against the lynchings was fighting against the miseducation of the Negro.
Now we still in that fight. We're still fighting against the miseducation, but now we're fighting against the miseducation of the new Negro, the neo Negro, the 2023 Negroes. With all our social media programming and things now, because if it said if a dude on the internet and he got his shirt off, if he black and he got his shirt off and he's speaking passionately with the sunlight shining behind him, people will believe him. That's how you can tell people that you can walk to Africa through the Grand Canyon. And people are in the comments, this brother is speaking truth. Black people realize the scamming black people realize how ignorant a lot of black people are and uneducated and frivolously structured minds that we have, that they can get on the internet. I bet you some of them be like, man, watch this. They get on the internet and just say the most outlandish things, and people in the comments be like, man, y'all just don't believe it because y'all not free thinkers. The white man got y'all mind. Y'all not, and like, so I could just say anything. I could just say and how we know these folk ain't working for these white folk. How we know these folk not agents of these white folk just get on here and say anything, because we all know you can create a following. Just be passionate about what you're saying.
Oh, not only that, you can create a following with their assistance, and they have access to the algorithm, blow somebody's whole channel up. Meanwhile, somebody like, I don't know, a brother named Joseph Ward can be putting out good information, and next thing you know, he's demonetized.
Hey, well, I'm not out here telling people that Harriet Tubman ain't real either. So,
but I think one of the things black people gotta understand is that the reason things maneuver this way, and to be quiet, so I changed directions even on that. There's a war going on right now in the white community as it relates to black people in this way. If the southern races could just chill out long enough for the assimilation process to complete, there'd be no new Negro problems whatsoever. But they can't contain their own hatred long enough to allow the assimilation program to complete. And so then you got the northern liberal Negro.
Hold on.
Negro.
Can we
go ahead?
That's deep. You gotta let quick marinate. All right, that's deep. Go ahead.
But then you got the northern liberal Negro who is just like, look, bro, we leading these motherfuckers by the nose. They going into our schools, learning our shit, craving our stuff, trying to be as much like us as possible. Assimilation is the goal. You get all the benefits, none of the drawbacks. They become exactly like us. And we know they not, but they forget that they not. So that's and I think that's one of the things we got to keep in mind as we start talking about, because there's a lot of the old debates are coming back, integration versus assimilation, blah, blah, blah. But the substance is still missing. Why is assimilation the goal for the people in power? Like, no matter what group, if you get a collection of people that are in power and a new group is introduced, after the power struggle, once the dominant group has established dominance, the process of assimilation begins. Yep. There's a reason for that. We need to understand the reason for that, and that'll help us understand what we seeing when we see what we see. There are two distinct types of white people out here, and they don't like each other.
I say three, because you got the southern whites, you got the real white, and then the real white who really got the power. But we're on the same page though.
But at the end of the day,
get out whites.
Right. but at the end of the day, this is why assimilation is the name of the game. This is why Ruby Bridges is held up as a hero, because she was forced as a child. She didn't have a choice. But her parents were led to believe that if you keep sending your kid here, despite the bumps, the bruises, the lumps, the cuts, the scrapes, the blood, and the emotional trauma and everything else, we'll be better off for it. When they said we, they meant them. But to us, when we hear we think all of us.
Yeah, no. Hey, a rising tide don't raise boats to have holes in them, or you
Right.
even have to have a boat out there in the harbor for the tide to raise it.
Look, man,
Shit, a rising tide might be a damn tsunami.
we we fucking on the dock. We not even on the dock. We on the beach
Yeah.
while the
Without
water's rising, waiting for somebody to bring us a boat to get in so that we can rise with it.
But
Now we drowning, folks.
so, and I'm glad you said that because you made me think about. And I did a video on it, so y'all go make sure y'all check out my video where I'm talking about Ron DeSantis and his decision to reject the African American AP curriculum. Now, I encourage all Black people who critically think to go look into exactly why he rejected it. If you go look into it, I don't agree fully, but there's one part in there. I'm not even going to watch my video if you want to learn about that part. But the fact of the matter with that is Black people are so upset to the point of being Crump and 3 teens from here are, they put together a lawsuit to sue Ron DeSantis. And I'm like, the Black person to me, I don't really have a problem with the lawsuit like that. But my thing is, we're putting more energy in suing somebody, putting more energy into and being angry that white people refuse to teach our children what we refuse to teach our children. That's the idiocy in it. I'm gonna say it one more time. We're mad at white people for refusing to teach our children what we refuse to teach our children already.
Yeah, well, in 2015, Howard University had a charter school, a middle school in Washington, D.C., where 3 social studies teachers were fired for teaching students about Malcolm X. I believe it was Malcolm X or and the history of former Mayor Marion Barry. They were fired. You know what I'm saying? For teaching Black history. This is the climate we're in. So this is why we say you have to create cohorts and learn how to teach and educate our children ourselves. But that also comes with a responsibility attached to it that makes this where it's a necessity. I mean, listen, just a couple weeks ago, we had a situation in Baltimore where a student who was in the 12th grade getting ready for his prom and getting ready for the final year of school had to be sent back all the way to the 9th grade. He had to be re-entered into the school as a damn freshman.
But
because he didn't pass any classes.
Boy, you about to make me flip my lid talking about this.
Where's the preventive response? Because the mom came on and I worked 3 jobs and 3 full-time jobs, and
I think we talked about this in one, but please talk some more because that's that shit. Throw something at her.
Why didn't anybody check to see this boy's report card?
Why she didn't do that?
Every year he got a pair of Jordans for birthday and a PS5 or PS6 or whatever for Christmas. Why in the hell? See, we are not willing to take accountability for the things that happen under our own damn rules. So we're not even going to take accountability for that. What chance do we have of actually convincing these same Black people who the relationship goals are trips and the leisure, life of leisure and things of that nature, the finest clothes, the finest threads, the finest dineries, places to eat? When are we going to convince them? Like here in Philadelphia, if football was a race, then everybody would be a Eagle, right?
So we know even Umar, we know.
Right.
I quit the end up. Wait, stop it. Let's stop.
So we don't have civic pride in being Black. That comes with the culture, teaching the culture, reinforcing the culture. We don't do none of those things. So this is why I say, and it's a shame. In order to save the culture, we might even have to bypass the damn parents.
Ain't no might. Look, this particular story that we're talking about with the lady. Any like if something else, let's say another situation would have happened and it calls for her to say the statement, "This is my child. You don't do such and such to my." Okay, this is your child that failed, has been failing for 3 years. I don't care about nothing else. Your child that you pushed out of your womb, that was living in your house under your care, under your supervision, under your parental care, was failing for 3 years, and you had no idea. Lady, stop the sob story. Stop playing victim. Stop acting like, oh, it's everybody else's fault. Education, it's your job. That's your son. It's your child. Because you're gonna say that in any other time. Say that now. That's your child, and you drop the ball on your child, lady. Take the responsibility. Did the teachers mess up too? Yes, but ultimately it falls on you. You are the coach of the team. You are the reason y'all lost.
And I mean, and not to just, I mean, not to continue to hammer this home, but when that young brother's attendance records came out, he had missed over 100 days of school, I believe. And come to find out, he has younger siblings. So the assumption is he's helping parent that household. You know what I'm saying? So, and I'm not, like I said, because I know how people will read this and, listen, man, as people who have to move past the arrested development, we are in the situations we're in primarily because of decisions we made. I got some foul shit. If it happens to me, I got to deal with that. If it happens to anybody, we all have to deal with that. But the bottom line is, this is a personal responsibility we all have to take heed in. And if we're not taking heed in the basic things, then teaching your child history, you definitely teaching them a culture. But the culture you're teaching them is going to be one of those cultures that continues the tradition of generational curses.
We got to break our culture of miseducation. We have to break that culture of miseducation or no education at all. Right. When I was growing up, one of the best things my parents did was put nothing but pictures of black people, black kings. So you know how now in the 2000s, everybody like 5-7 years ago, people like we was kings and stuff. I knew that. I knew that in the in preschool. Remember those Budweiser posters with the black African kings and stuff, even though it was Budweiser, but we still saw black people. But my parents took a concerted effort to make sure that we saw images of nothing but black people in our house. That helped.
And so even with that, because that's another component of the education and the cultural shift that needs to happen before we can take full control of our education, is being honest about representation. Y'all already know where I'm going with this. Everybody wasn't a descendant of a king. Everybody wasn't a descendant of a queen.
They know that. They just tell themselves that to feel good. They know that.
But this is what I'm saying. Stop letting people tell themselves that to feel. Look, we had a period in time where we can lie when we talking to the rest of the world. I ain't got no problem with positive propaganda, right? None whatsoever. I had to get there, but I had a big bro that helped me get there. So I'm there now, right? But when we're interacting with each other, we gotta be real, and that means that we gotta accept certain things about ourselves that we might not want to accept, because that's what's going to help us move forward. And it goes even into this conversation we're having currently about relationships and about men being men and women being women. Look, bro, if you a man making $40,000-$50,000 a year, you're enough. That's enough. You good. If you can eat, put a roof over your head, pay all your bills, and you're enough. You don't need a Bugatti or a McLaren or nothing like that. Like, so that, and that's where we start to run into problems where black people start thinking that they're the creators of everything and the inventors of everything.
Our culture is so powerful.
And blah blah.
Our culture is so powerful, we produce nothing for ourselves.
Right.
Wow, we have such a powerful culture.
And that's where I'm like, we gotta, and that's why I say so in public, cool, but in private, we gotta do something different. And I'm saying this now, knowing that it's going up on YouTube, but also thinking that we're having a conversation amongst ourselves, even though
Right.
we know that it's going up on YouTube. So
But
I
still,
don't know, Joe, what you gonna do with that?
it's a pseudo.
Yeah, we gotta stop with that. Our culture is a giveaway, mass giveaway. Yeah, we we did this, we did that, but
Yeah,
I mean, rock and roll was stolen from us. But if you go to Nashville, you would have thought they created the shit.
just gave it.
Bro,
No,
what you just said. Growing up, I had no clue. My mom and dad taught me a lot about Black history. I didn't know rock and roll was Black people shit.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rock and
Chuck
roll,
Berry
jazz,
and
blues, and all that.
what's the other lady? I can't think
I
of the
knew
other lady's
Elvis
name
wasn't
now.
about shit, and I knew Elvis had stole shit, but I didn't know that Black people had created rock and it's a lot of things as an adult that I learned that Black people had created, but there's also a lot of things that I've learned as an adult that Black people claim credit for that we did not create.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean,
like King James. Let's get into that. Why the fuck are y'all claiming King James?
That don't even Beethoven
make strategic sense.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's all.
Look, man. Look.
Even when we teach ourselves the wrong shit.
right.
But no, but that look, I have a real beef. I have a real beef with the entire story of like what happened with the Montgomery bus boycott and Rosa Parks and all them, the whole story not being told. I have a real beef with that. I have a real beef with Black people still spreading the narrative the way they're spreading about the relationship or the dynamic between Madam C.J. Walker and Annie Malone. These Negroes even went as far as to make a movie on Netflix, self-made, to spread the misinformation, and was trying to just act like it was just okay to do it. And then so, like Black people, Madam C.J. Walker learned what she learned from Annie Malone. Madam C.J. Walker did not create those products. She did not create the hair care industry. She was not the first Black woman to become a millionaire. Now that doesn't mean she was nothing. But what it means is we got to start telling our information in the proper context. She learned that from Annie Malone. Tell the story correct. Stop lying to the people because it makes you feel good. You are part of the problem. You might as well join the Klan. You might as well go ahead and be with white people because you perpetuating white supremacy.
You damn sure are, and you're doing it because Annie Malone was dark skinned and CJ Walker was light skinned and it's color
reverse. It's the reverse, but
Joe, don't you correct me because Annie Malone had the skin of space and the carbon from the moon.
Hey, but nevertheless, though, we have to stop miseducating ourselves in the interest of feeling good, in the interest of trying to fit in the white people. Think about it. We're the same people who talk so big. Everybody's afraid of us. Every other group of people are afraid of us, but we're afraid to say white people. We point at the palm of our hand when we could even be by ourselves, around ourselves. We don't say white people. We point at our hands. I said white people. I always say, "Oh, you talking about white people?" And I make sure I say it loud. Well, I mean, if you feel comfortable degrading your own people, I'm just saying.
Listen, it says either we tell glorious propaganda that doesn't serve us, or we allow them to tell it. I had a student in a 7th grade classroom tell me that I was wrong for teaching the story of Harriet Tubman because in the movie, this thing happened, that thing happened.
I'm gonna throw something at you, student.
So, we have to get back to that place where we own our shit. And ownership comes with responsibility because you got to protect it. And when you protect it, that means you got to have some heart. And we don't have a lot of people with heart these days.
And let's take that a step further. Because you made me think. We got a lot of Black people who produce movies. They just be the same that the white people would make. Like how many more criminal New Jack City type, Scarface type movies are we gonna make? Like how many versions of that do we need? But it's like even but that goes further into the miseducation and the Negro mindset. Black people who do have the independent means to create movies still creating the same destructive movies that the white people would create.
But
Something wrong with that.
that goes back to what we talked about earlier. Those concepts have been mainstream. They selling that the same with hip hop music. They selling it to white folk. Black folk buying it as a byproduct.
Right, right. And remember, people learn and people are programmed through pictures and sound. We just saying we got to change the way we think about education. We got to change the way we actually educate ourselves. New definitions, new names for this new Negro, because we're not the same Negroes in the past. We're Black people, I would say. For the modern Black person, it has to be relevant for us to free ourselves moving forward. We learn from our past so we can move forward.
And before we sign out, y'all remember Little Richard invented raisins. So why they got this white girl face on? I'm just saying.
Hey man, you crazy, bro. I want to give a quick shout out to to Lola Kepi. I want to definitely give a shout out to Lola Kepi. I appreciate you supporting us all the way from France. You always tune in to my videos and you're always leaving great inspirational comments and things, and things like that does help keep me going. And I appreciate you showing the love all the way from France. So I wanted to make sure that I give you a personal shout out to Lola Kepi, because you don't have to, but you all the way in France and you showing love. So I appreciate you and everybody else who is supporting On the Shoulder Giants, helping us move forward. I appreciate you because, hey, we taking off. We like a man smoking a cigarette at the gas station. We blowing up. The L, he PC. I'm Joe. We out of here.